Here. The session that we're going to be doing today is the role of content knowledge in ELA literacy and in ELD. And my name is Nancy Veatch, and I'm from the Tehama County Department of Education and adjunct faculty at Chico State University. And we've already met Hallie.
Slowik had earlier, mostly one of the co-authors and
Okay. So the goal this afternoon is really to spend some time talking about what is that role of content knowledge that exists in TK2 or in TK2 and TK5. I'm so used to doing trainings, and how can we attend to that?
And session outcomes for today, again, through the day, is to increase familiarity with the ELA framework, to understand why content knowledge is a key theme in the framework, to explore 3 ways that content knowledge is developed, and that's wide reading, engaging the research, and engaging the informational text, and then to analyze some snapshots that demonstrate that integration of ELA literacy with the content.
So just kind of a little, review about what Nancy talked about this morning, which is what the different chapters are. And so the introduction obviously being the beginning of the framework. Chapter 1, completely discussing the overview. And the focus of Chapter 2 is all about the key considerations. What I want you to take a minute to do is think about which chapter pertains to your particular grade level. Because as we go through an activity a little bit later, I want you to remember, okay, I teach 2nd grade, so then I would be Chapter 4. Okay, so just take a minute to kind of make a mental note of which chapter is your focus area. All right. We saw this diagram this morning. It was described in detail. You've seen it in every one of the sessions, the circles of implementation. And really the focus for what we're going to do now is to talk about content knowledge. How does content knowledge integrated into TK classrooms all the way through 5th grade, and what role does it play? On all of your chairs, what you have are quotes, and they're on half-page sheets. They're on cardstock. If you will please pick up one of those quotes, doesn't matter which one, either in the seat you were sitting at or the seat next to you. And what we would like you to do is take a minute to read through this quote and jot down some significant feature that kind of resonates with you, to think about the connection of ELA, literacy, ELD, and content knowledge. So please just take a minute to do a little close reading to think about that. We're going to talk for a minute just about the Chapter 1. No one has that particular quote, but I just kind of want to take a moment to think about this with you. We know that the focus of the ELA and literacy Common Core State Standards is for increased rigor. Right? We want all students to experience what that looks like. What has happened in many times in classrooms, and I know that you've seen it, students in 3rd grade, students in 2nd grade, they aren't getting exposed to science or social studies or content. The focus for most of the day is on foundational skills and the teaching of reading. And so it's how can we begin to make sure that teachers are integrating content into that particular learning that they're doing, building skills in reading and building content knowledge at the same time. And so really what we think about here is it's a shared responsibility. It needs to happen, right, at all times throughout the day. We want kids to have access to the content, not to be doing tasks that are meaningless to them, but where they're building skills and knowledge. Let's take a minute now to think about Chapter 2. Can someone share with us something that resonated with them from one of their cards that they have? And what we had you do, we're just kind of modeling it. You were trying to make meaning, and now we're doing a little bit of effective expression, right? Okay, can you share with us?
Students who know more about the content of the text comprehend better than what might be predicted by their textbooks.
Okay, excellent job. Anyone else from Chapter 2 that would like to add to that? Do I have to?
This is still.
Oh. Okay. Anyone else with Chapter 2? Yes.
It talked about how texts make assumptions about what the reader knows. So many times the content text won't give like scaffolds to help students because they assume that they've got it. They've got the foundational skills necessary to
Like Monty Hall.
to read.
Okay, nice job. Excellent. Anyone else with another aha from Chapter 2? Let's think about that. Yes.
Well, the one I had, basically, it's just as they use all of the Common Core reading, speaking, listening, language, and writing skills, they're doing that and learning language convention, which is the ELD part at the same time, while they do it around content. But I mean, it's the integration of it that's the key.
Exactly. Right. Nice job. And again, that takes us back to, right, the circles that we were talking about, and when we're thinking about the white, it's that integrated piece. Everything is integrated. So we're experiencing the understanding of development of content while we're building literacy skills at the same time. How about those of you who had oops, went too far. Those of you who had chapter 3 and the quote from chapter 3. Did anyone have chapter 3, first of all? I should check. Okay. Can you share with us something that kind of stuck with you from chapter 3's quote?
Integrating the content as well, but also not leaving out the hands-on investigation, the exploration and the projects, where I think those had gotten brushed under the rug for a while. So it's nice to see that coming back out again.
Remember here, this is our TK1 zone, right? It's okay to play with worms and to have worm races and to have them out and have lots of books about worms, and you're learning about worms and what is it that you can explore? Can you go outside and find them? Can we have a worm farm that we're experiencing? All of those things are critical and important. How about anyone else from chapter 3?
Well, I had chapter 3, and I wrote words like integrate. I wrote words like balance. The CCSS says, 50% informational, 50% literary. And so they think you have to have 25 of this story and 25 of that story. And it's not about that. It's about the time, which I circled that word, time in the school day. And so I think that's important to kind of like sit back, because I wrote the word balance. You want to balance not just your day, but your week, your month, your whole year.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And students still need exposure to different pieces of literature. Right? Lots of them come from hard places at home, and that's they can identify with what's happening in some of those stories. Yes?
I'm chapter 4.
Uh-huh.
But I'm also a secondary teacher in the high school. I don't think I need that, but you can.
No, it goes into the video.
Oh, I see.
Sorry.
And so, just curious, because there was an elementary teacher that was talking about snails having mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters, and I'm wondering, couldn't we use true academic language, content language even in elementary, rather than, so when they come to me, they really understand that they don't have moms and dads, and there's no brothers and sisters, snails.
And the integration of that academic language, when it would be appropriate, obviously, depending upon the particular content, to include that in there.
That it's okay to use those words at this level.
We don't want to, that was what we were getting into, right? This situation where we're dumbing the language down to make it more comprehensible.
That was said in an earlier session, the academic language. They were very specific about not watering down. That even with a kindergartner, using the language of school, that academic language, that's a good thing. We need to do more of that.
Yeah.
That's a shift for a lot of teachers.
It is.
And I just have to add, and we try to make that really clear in the framework, is that we all have to be really rich models of language use. That's one of the key ways to build kids' language.
Right.
Yeah.
And kids who come to school already, what language their parents are using at home.
Yes.
By what their vocabulary is already when they arrive.
They're either at, a 3,000 word deficit on day one of kinder, or they're, miles above, simply because of the level of language that might be spoken in the home.
Some of them know what antioxidants are when they're 3 years old.
That's academic language at its finest. Anyone else want to share with us anything from chapter 4? If you had a card from chapter 4? No? All right. How about chapter 5? He's going to 4th and 5th grade.
Chapter 5, I'm just sort of reading from here that was important to me. It's the meaning making with text not only requires the ability to employ comprehension strategies such as questioning and summarizing and comprehension monitoring, but that it also demands knowledge of the content. So you can't ignore that content information.
You cannot. You cannot. It is critical. Exactly. And that's part of the reason why, too, we talk about the difference with integrated and designated ELD and providing that instruction and that scaffolding support so students can get access to that content, right, at that high level. We don't want to not provide them with that opportunity. So we're going to kind of shift a little bit to talk about how is content knowledge developed alongside ELA literacy and ELD, right? So how do kids get this understanding of content, and what does that look like? And we know that there are 3 key things. The first one is wide reading. So I kind of want you to think for a minute about your particular chapter. Remember which chapter was yours in your head? Were you chapter 3, chapter 4, or chapter 5? But wide reading is critical to their success. And we had someone share back here, yes, there's a 50-50 split. And we have some folks who are taking that very literally, right? Okay, I spent from now until these 3 hours this morning, I read informational text, and now we're going to move in and we're going to read narrative text the rest of the day. No, it's not that cut and dry. It's exposure to different text, right? And packaging text sets together so you have a narrative story about a worm on an adventure, coupled with a really great nonfiction passage that teaches them all about worms and what are details and facts that they might know about that. We want them to read a wide range of texts at school and independently as well. And I do think this is something that we need to pay heed to, because we do have a lot of schools in our area who continue to use accelerated reader as their main form of home reading, because it's easy for teachers to manage. But what's happening is a lot of times, it's very limited in terms of the nonfiction. And so students who thrive in 4th and 5th grade and love nonfiction, we don't want to lose them as readers who walk away from the table because they want to read about how to take a carburetor apart, right? They want to read about something other than what may be in that particular type of book. So that wide reading has to, and you'll notice it talks about in school and independently as well. How can we make sure that we are having them have an opportunity to attend to all kinds of text? So just take a minute and look at, for your particular grade level, how they discuss it in the framework. All right. If you'll turn and just share with your partner one example that you can think of wide reading in your particular grade level. I'm only going to give you a minute to do it. It's an example of wide reading. And again, these are quick little snippets of conversation. So if you can wrap it up really quickly, and then someone who might want to share with us out loud, what would be an example that you can think of wide reading? Is someone willing to share an example of wide reading? What would that mean? Yes?
Well, just from my own son's perspective, he's reading something in school which he's not interested in at all, but he really likes the Percy Jackson series. And so then for Christmas, I gave him like different Greek myths and Roman myths and different things that were related, but not the same. And that to me is a wide range. You're starting to, and he like, Sorry. And he wanted to know what the Temple of Athena was. So then we looked at Greece and we saw the actual temple. So broadening it in that regard.
Excellent. And what a great thing as a parent to be able to do that, right? Yeah. Expand that out. That's fun. Which takes us to the next one, which is our second way to build content knowledge is engaging with informational text. Providing them that opportunity to do that. I know when I first started working in the district, I was working at sort of as a coaching capacity. I would go into 2nd or 3rd grade classrooms and I'd say, well, let's take out your science book and we're going to do a little bit of exploration with the book. And the book went, it's like, wow, you've had it for 2 years. It smells like glue. And so what's happening is we're not providing them with that opportunity, right? How do we get them to engage with informational text? We can do that with textbooks, we can do that with other types of books, but they need exposure to that. Otherwise, how are they going to be able to read like a scientist when they're in 10th grade in chemistry if they haven't had opportunities to read like that when they're in 2nd and 3rd grade? So we want them to engage with informational text. 1/2 of what they should engage with, again, should be informational text across their 180 days. This is a really great resource. CDE has a database that exists. It's searchable by discipline, grade span, and language of recommended literature. I don't want the term literature to sort of mislead you in a way, because it includes a list of nonfiction and a list of fiction materials that are all searchable. It is not a prescriptive list, because some people get that and say, okay, everything on here I need my principal to purchase. No. These are recommended pieces of literature which might be appropriate for your particular group of students. And again, students in the Silicon Valley have different reading needs than students where I'm from, which is Red Bluff, California, which is very rural. And so you have to kind of meet their needs and what their background knowledge entails. The students really need instruction on how to read a range of informational text, including how to gain meaning from graphics and visuals. This is going to be really important as we head into SBAC testing and we think about our students taking a performance task in language arts and a performance task in mathematics, and the performance task in mathematics may compile as much as 75% of the score, where they're reading graphs and charts and they're writing responses. If they haven't had an opportunity to engage with mathematics at that level with informational text, they're not going to be able to be successful. And it's that all goes back to what kinds of instruction we can provide them within the classroom. So we have to teach them how to read that, right? What's a heading? What's a subheading? The headings are always blue, right? What's a paragraph? We still have kids who insist every paragraph only has 5 sentences. And every essay only has 5 paragraphs. And those are 11th graders, right? So we need to help them understand what that is like. And then the third thing is we want them to engage in research. And the framework really clearly explains what this is, and take a minute to look at it for your particular grade level. That does not mean we want every 4th grade teacher to do a mission report and every 5th grade teacher to spend time doing a state report. And that is the thing that you do for the year, where you're going to spend 8 weeks doing it and the kid's going to hate writing by the time they're done. That's not what we're referring to. Look at how they call it out for our young students. You're going to interact in meaningful ways with their peers about content learning, right? We're learning about worms. We're pulling it up on the big screen, pulling up images of worms. We're reading about what they do for us. We're going outside. We're digging in the dirt and finding them. Look at how then it shifts by the time you get to 2nd and 3rd grade. Shared research and writing projects, right? People are interested about different things. We have a group of students over here, and they find something they're fascinated about, and they begin to wonder, right? That's why we have there are some of the websites, the Wonderopolis, right? Where they can pursue something. Because what's happened is we've taken that away from them in the past, and now we get to give it back to them. We want them to pursue that. You're interested in it? Go find it out. We spent so much time under the old standards asking all the questions. We want them to ask some questions now, because that's how we build motivation and love of reading. And then finally, in our 4th and 5th grade students, research projects. They pursue their interests. They're motivated and engaged to be at the table to learn about something. I had a 5th grade student, very reluctant reader, absolutely didn't see that reading was for him at all. And so I go back to the carburetor example. I said, what are you interested in? Well, I need to know how to take my carburetor apart on my whatever motorcycle. That kid was hooked from that day forward because he read about the carburetor. I said, fine, your test is you bring that thing in here, you take it apart in front of me, you clean it in front of me, and you put it back together. And if you can do that, then I know that you've read the manual. And I was so excited because this last fall, he started at UTI in Sacramento as a young adult in the program there at 18. And so it's just finding that fuel so that they can then grab onto it and go with it, getting them to engage. So Hallie's going to come on up and talk about how does this all play into ELD.
Thank you. As you know, this is one of the cross-cutting themes that cuts across ELA as well as ELD. And we're going to let you do some more reading here for a moment. But I'd like to share this graphic. It's figure 2.19, which means it's the 19th figure in chapter 2. And essentially it is summarizing what a comprehensive ELD program is, right? Comprehensive means it's integrated and designated. And so both of those, integrated and designated, have as one aspect of them learning to use language. Both of those have learning about how English works in a variety of genres and areas. And both of them are about learning content through English. So content knowledge is clearly an aspect of the ELD standards as well as the ELA standards. One of the things I have to say, just interject right now, is how critical, how much we know about the relationship between knowledge, and I said this morning, and literacy development and language development. And for too long, especially kids who are having difficulty with learning to read or who needed a lot of support in English language development, too long those kids were pulled from any content instruction that did exist. And that is setting them up so much for problems in the future, because your vocabulary and your ability to use language in a variety of ways that shine through in the contents, as well as your knowledge, those are really the big variables in the future for kids. Once you are past simply accessing the print, those are the variables that are going to be crucial down the road. So we are creating substantial problems for those kids, the very kids we think we're going to help. Oh, let's pull you out of science. Oh, let's pull you out of, oh, let's pull you out of this, as we begin to now give you more and more and more of the foundational skills and the ELD. And in fact, those kids need to be participating in that. So one of the messages that's very clear in this framework is that you should not be using that content instruction time to be addressing these other issues. And schools, of course, are saying, well, then how do we do that? And the response is local control. You all need to figure that out based on your needs, based on the dynamics, based on your resources, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's just a fundamental shift in California's thinking about how we're taking care of kids who need extra support in literacy and language. We're saying don't take them out of the rich content experiences, the research, the engaging with wide reading, the informational text, as well as all the pedagogical approaches that are occurring during science, right? As well as the explorations in social studies and the arts, right? You're going to pull them out of the arts? That may be the very thing that connects kids to school and keeps them engaged. So at any rate, that's just such a fundamental issue in this framework that I think it's crucial to say that. I'd like to zero in on this piece about ELD here by, again, sharing some quotes with you and having you do something a little different. This is a different strategy than we've done so far. And that's you're going to identify a partner. So you've already been meeting with partners. One of you is A and the other is B. So letter off, as we said in an earlier session today. Each partner reads silently something that I'm going to project, okay? Partner A is going to read the red text, and partner B is ignoring that red text and reading the blue text, okay? And then when both of you are ready, so you kind of got to look up and nod at each other and say, okay, ready? When both of you are ready, partner A is going to read aloud the text that he has, right? The red text, or she has, right? And partner B summarizes it. So you have to be a good listener. Partner A is reading the red text, partner B is listening and then summarizing or stating some of the key points. And you may need to reread. Would you read that to me again? You may need to do a little bit of that, but the idea is so that this becomes part of your, this is something that you ultimately can articulate without going back to these quotes. And then you switch, partner B reads aloud the blue text, which he had prepared, silent reading, and then A summarizes that. So let's do this first slide, and then we'll try it in a minute. So you have your A and your B? Is there anybody who's, or do we have an even number in here? Okay, we have, oh, thank you, you're going to join. Okay, you have it in print as well, but it's kind of tiny, so let's, here you go. You can either look on your own or look here. So read silently first so you have the opportunity to build up fluency and to make meaning with it. Okay, ready? Oh, I hear some wonderful things going on out there. So now you have the flow of this, right? Can anyone tell me, and you can both glance up here now, what would have been a key point that you got out of the red text? Either your summarizer or you who read it. What's just in a nutshell, what's a key point there? You bet you. ELs need full access to all the content. I mean, that's the big message in that part. What's the big message in the second part? Scaffolding. There must be support to ensure that happens. Right? Okay, so now you have the flow of this. We're going to go on to the next passage, next quote, same process, okay? Again, read it silently first so that you are a more fluid reader to the person who's about to be listening to you. Thank you. Could I hear what's the primary point? What we could do is have all our summarizers speak out right now. But for purposes of today, what's the key point?
Both and.
Both and. ELs have both integrated and designate, not either or, but that we provide both and. And what is the key point of the blue? A key point, because there are actually several. Thank you. Collaboration is certainly one.
Especially knowledge.
Yeah, focus, knowing the student, right? Knowing the student. So you just captured this idea and phrased it differently. What's another one?
I believe that ELs can achieve highest levels.
Yeah, you bet, you bet, you bet. And so I hope whoever was the summarizer caught that.
So
Right?
who determines that?
Who determines
The highest levels.
the highest levels? Who determines the highest levels? I'll ask you.
I mean, is it based on a test?
Do you think it's based on a test?
Is it based on that student and where they are in their level?
Is it A level? Is it multiple levels?
And are we only talking ELs, or is your
Right.
question the same for all kids?
That's what I mean.
You had a response or a comment?
I would say that it's probably the teacher who determines the outcome of a particular lesson that's being taught, and that what rigor that outcome is, and then how he or she is supporting the ELs with regard to academic and linguistic needs.
And let me add, yes, as you're saying, go ahead.
In the short term or the long term, too.
And let me add that part of this is what's on that outer circle of the circles of implementation, because that's the target. So what does it take for me as a fourth grade teacher to help you progress so that you're maximally achieving what I'm doing so that you are now able to keep moving and moving and moving toward that target? So part of it's me knowing you and knowing that I've helped you advance, right? And that I have not put a cap on what I think that what you can do. And tragically, that's what we do with a lot of kids. The kids who are learning disabled, well, I got them to do this, yay me, right? And so the lid is put on. Oh, our ELs, well, at least we got them doing this. So there's that notion, there's a psychology here about educators and others putting a lid on, putting the ceiling on. So it's part of it's just a philosophical stance about this. But it's also, in part, that notion of what are the ultimate goals and what is my pathway, my role towards those ultimate goals. And yes, there may be assessments that come along the way, right? As I look at SBAC and I say, okay, look at, there are these performances, the expectations, and where are my kids in this? And actually, this kid was already able to do that at the beginning of the year. So what have I done for them if that's the same level where they are at the end of the year? So that whole notion that we keep advancing kids and keep advancing. Somebody else had a hand up, I think. Yes, thank you.
On the part where it says, most importantly, sustain focus on the strengths, and especially the part where it says, and needs of individual English learners, and looking at that from a linguistic standpoint about how important it is that we really know the standards and we get and dive into them so we can really honestly address that, the needs of the individual English learners from a linguistic standpoint.
Terrific. Another comment. Okay, then let me add something else here. Since our topic is content knowledge, this quote didn't explicitly make that comment the same that the previous quote did, make that link. What in here makes the link for you as the educators? In the red quote, where's the link with the topic of content knowledge? And in the blue quote, what's the link with content knowledge?
Well, the blue, academic excellence.
Academic excellence, good, that's one. In the blue, there's another one in the blue.
Well, the other one would lose the support of teachers, a collaborative effort, which would inherently suggest a cross-subject area.
Yes, exactly. So there it is, that notion of deep collaboration. If we're going to make this happen, deep collaboration across those, because what's happening in the red quote?
Integrating.
Thank you. Integrated ELD. That's about integrating it with the content areas. Exactly. So that's this link. Let's just do the next couple of quotes fairly quickly, but same process. And then we'll move on to our next piece. So read it quietly. Yeah, Red keeps getting the short one. So you ought to be reading it very fluently, huh? Because you get more practice than your partner. Sorry, I'm going to cut you off. Some of you were talking enough you didn't get entirely through it. And I'm not even going to take the time to process that one. You still have it in your handout. I'll make some more comments in a bit. You also have this one, which I should let you read because Red has more text this time. Okay, so do it very quickly, summarize for each other, and then we'll move on. We should read it silently first, right? Okay, thank you. They say, what is the point? What is the point of these 4 quotes? What is the point of us sharing these 4 quotes in this session? Yeah, will you say it again?
On how content is related or designated and integrated ELD instruction is related to content and the other way around.
Thank you. So as we think about these 5 big overarching themes of the standards, it is not that content knowledge is in the domain of the literacy across the content areas, but that it is there, but it is also the domain of ELD. In fact, it's fundamental to it. As kids learn about language specific to certain content, and as the content as used as the vehicle by which we help kids think about, grow, and expand their language, right? And how it is used. And so this notion of content knowledge cutting across both those sets of standards is fundamental. So again, you have those, and these are also online in that digital chalkboard site. I believe all these things are there so that you can find these again if you'd like. But there's much more, right? There's much more about how content knowledge weaves throughout all of this and why it's important. Let me, we've already done this, what are some key ideas? Let me just ask you to reflect on that strategy for a moment. We raced through it, but tell me anything about it in terms of your reaction to that, just as a strategy to engage in some text. Thank you.
Well, it encourages repeat readings. Because I had to read it twice to be able to read it to her with prose and intonation and everything that I needed. And RELs really need listening comprehension and opportunities, authentic opportunities to engage in that. And that was also really kind of powerful.
Thank you. Yes?
Quite honestly, it was really challenging for me to look at my partner while she was reading and not be able to look at the text, and how much that impacted my comprehension. And in the beginning I thought, oh, I know what the idea was and I'm about to paraphrase, but then as I began to do it, I felt like I was fumbling for words or wanting to look up there and grab the key ideas out once again.
Completely legitimate comment. And so how might you as the teacher deal with that? Let's say this was, we had a lot longer session. What might I do about that? Reaction?
This is a question.
Okay, is it reacting to that first?
No.
Oh, okay, hold your question.
Okay.
How might we handle that? You can look at it, but again, the listening is also critical, and that puts a lot of ownership also on the reader to make sure you're using expression and trying to ensure that you're communicating it well. So one way, multiple opportunities. What else?
I was going to say multiple opportunities to hear it, and just like in one of the workshops we had, just listen to it and take notes, and then listen to it again.
Exactly.
And add to it.
And that's where I was going is, okay, would you read that again? This time I'm taking some notes on it. So yes, sir.
But sometimes you have to underline and have the opportunity to read it by yourself, because remember, there are learners that are more, auditory
I
than
would take it as
vision.
one strategy
Yes.
to do that.
Yes.
And that there's
The visual.
definitely time to do that, but I think that we also have our kids sitting and hearing a lot of lectures, and if they can't comprehend, if they can't listen and pull out important pieces, then that is something that that's a skill they also need. So I think what today has taught me is they need a variety of different activities.
Thank you.
Repeatedly.
Yes, thank you, thank you. So let me say, is there a connection with meaning making here? Did you, as the reader, have to, as the listener, have to engage in real meaning making in order to summarize? Was there language development? Perhaps as you're thinking, you're noticing keywords and trying to use it. Was there the effective expression piece to this? As you, the reader, were engaged in effective expression in part, but where you also maybe say, oh, I like the way that quote phrased that, right? So some of those things resonate and stay with you. Was there the notion of content knowledge acquisition? Yes, this is a content, right? And what about connection with foundational skills? You've got to have them, right? You've got to have them, and you've got to have those opportunities to practice the fluency. So we did it very quickly, and you would have to, of course, scaffold depending on who your learners were and so forth. But the whole point of going through that part was to make that connection with content knowledge. Now, sir.
Okay, so I'm coming from a secondary background and an administrative
Welcome
background.
to the TK group.
Yes. My question is this. You know, so much of this is more inherent in K-5 because most K-5 teachers have somewhat of a reading background or those kinds of things. As you guys wrote this, how do you envision the professional development helping the secondary teacher incorporate all three of these? Because they're so focused on content that even some of the basic terms, they don't even know what they mean.
Right.
Like a long noun phrase. You know, the science
Nominalization.
teacher has no idea what a long noun phrase is.
Right. How do we envision it? We envision it as a journey, as something that requires significant professional learning opportunities, opportunities to engage with our colleagues in those professional learning communities or whatever kind of structure there is that impacts teacher education programs. Right, which is where I am in a teacher prep program, that it has got to be something where there is thoughtful development of knowledge of our teachers. And that's why what must happen is that as we go back to our own districts, our own sites, we say, how are we going to do this?
So that's going to be inherent on the district to decide how they're going to accomplish that.
And I think you'll have support at multiple levels. I suspect there's some more. I mean, this is, you know, here's an example. You had San Mateo, we had CDE, we had people coming in to just start launching this conversation to build this kind of awareness and discussion. There needs to be the follow-up. There must be. You know, if this is a collaborative endeavor, we've got to give our educators time to figure out how this is all going to work. It is a big task to really put into play the kind of thing we envision. But if we believe this is what's right for kids and for youth, then we've got to be willing to put in that time and have those conversations and build those structures and so forth. Want to add anything to that?
Add to that a little bit. So I work in Region 2, which is the 9 northern counties. So yesterday I did a training all day for their high school. And the high school asked me to count to 30 high school teachers. And you have to remember, anyone who's graduated in the last 10, 15 years from a credential program, they take a disciplinary literacy course along with their secondary credential that they receive. And as part of their PACT process, they're actually having to incorporate ELD and ELA standards into their actual lesson that's being scored by the PACT scores to get a credential. So some of that, you know, the folks who are coming newer out of programs, they're attending to those needs at that point in time. But what it really takes is groups of educators coming together and saying, even yesterday when I left, this group of teachers there, it was the teachers who were voicing this, we've got to do this together. And it goes right back to what we talked about this morning when Hallie and Nancy were talking and they shared about what are those 5 key principles in the framework. This is a shared responsibility. Literacy is no longer the responsibility of the English teacher.
Or language development, right? The ELD teacher,
right,
yeah.
Right. So I think it has to be something that is embraced by the staff.
But that we also need to recognize that it will take
I know.
time.
The reason I bring that up is even when Common Core came out, it was identified that informational text and social studies and science was critical. But I guarantee that 99% of the social studies and science teachers have never read the Common Core standards for ELA. So I mean, it is inherent, an inherent decision to make it happen.
Right.
And I just think that's where guidance is really going to be helpful for the districts to be able to know how to do this with their secondary teaching cadre.
You may want to refer to the presentation that happened next door. The last time we looked at that, it was Nancy's presentation, and that was addressing Chapter 11, which is really how do you begin to bring these changes to your district?
Yeah,
Right.
the professional learning piece. Yeah, good, thank you. Let's go on to the last piece here and look at how the snapshots and vignettes support our educators with seeing how this plays out in the field. And so you do all have somewhere, or at least it's on the resource, I believe. It's also in your handouts, the snapshot and vignette chart that shows what content areas are linked with ELA literacy and ELD, as well as what grade levels, right? The content areas, the grade levels. What we've done is put some snapshots around the room, and we're going to ask us to engage in a carousel of snapshots. We'd like you to select a snapshot to read. Let's say you come over here to grade 4 or grade 5. There's grade 1. There's kindergarten lying on the table over there. Another kindergarten here. They're around the room. Select one to go to. Please read it, but you'll be reading it fairly swiftly. This is not going to be a deep, close read and an analysis. Add a comment or idea to the poster, please. Consider maybe how the content is addressed. Consider perhaps the ELA or ELD instruction that's going on. Consider, oh, here's a really excellent teaching practice. I like this. Consider anything that strikes you as important. You have Post-its nearby, so you're reading it. You actually could also mark on this as long as the next person who reads it can still read it. So you're welcome to go through and make those comments. You're going to then move to another snapshot. And in our ideal world, you could get to 2 or 3 of them. So you get that exposure. Then we're going to come back and do something with that. So again, just got to serve your own needs. Find a grade level and then go to another grade level. You'll need a pencil in your hand or pen. Okay, thank you very much. Any comments from where you are that anybody would like to say to the group? Something that you spotted, something that you appreciated, something that you, yes, thank you.
I appreciated this vignette or this snapshot. I couldn't see that it was designated or integrated, but when I read it, I was thrilled to see the differences. I could tell what was integrated and what was designated and how it supported content. They both supported content because it talked about first, this is in math class, and then it says during ELD, they supported the language of what was needed here during designated ELD, and then back in math class or math time, when the teacher was able to observe how, encourage the students to use that language that was learned in designated ELD, and then also to be able to observe whether they're using it correctly and make adjustments for designated ELD instruction time. So that made it really clear to me what the differences were. So the snapshots, I think, are going to be critical in looking at what does it mean, what does it really look like to integrate it.
And our grand hope is that they'll be used for not only the private reading as you're thinking about it yourself as a learner, but for professional learning, to sit there and talk through those elements and how might this be different, what might we do in a different content area, how might we change this with this group of students, so that notion of analyzing it and bettering each one of them. Someone else, comment?
I'll comment about the 4th grade example. This particular teacher was teaching about the gold rush, and he used all these note cards just to give students an opportunity to practice their vocabulary, and a lot of it domain specific, some of it academic language, and gave them ample opportunities to walk around the room. Each student had one term on a card and would interact in a conversation, and I would have maybe 5 or 6 opportunities to explain to Jose what my particular vocab word meant, and he could do the same, and we would go around and then hear from everybody else what their vocab meant, and then we would do a connection activity later. And I actually read this in another breakout, so I didn't read it just now, but I was really taken by it, where they would find a reason why, then find a partner whose vocabulary was connected to yours and decide why. And so he then gave the students many opportunities to decide why, and asked lots of clarifying questions, gave them opportunities to hear each other talk about why it was important, then asked them, invited them to go and find another partner to connect with, another word. And it just made me, and still in life, there are so many terms that
I remember being a student and even as a teacher, do kids really get these terms? You know, giving them an opportunity to deeply understand these terms, utilize them in discussion, which was a big takeaway for me. Wow, this is what we should be doing with language. So I love Mr. Duarte.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments before we wrap up?
I was just going to add something. So I know for teachers who are just transitioning, one thing that the vignettes can really do is good group study together to begin to think about, if we look at this as a grade level team and we read through it several times and do a close reading, where is there evidence of meaning making? Where is there evidence of foundational skills? Where is there evidence? Because what happens sometimes is teachers, like you said, I want to know what it looks like, right? This paints that picture of what it looks like, but then how do we take it to the next step to say, what do I need to do differently in my practice to get my practice to look like this? And so to maybe with a more critical eye, look at a vignette with your grade level team and introduce them to them and say, hey, let's look at this and look for these 5 key themes. And that's been really effective with some schools.
And all the themes may not occur in all the snapshots.
Exactly.
Yeah. So as appropriate. Okay, thank you very much for engaging in that. And I'll just, as our final comment, we could have gone through each one of these snapshots, and that's why you see them on your handout and ask you to comment on some specific things. But I think our time was well spent as it was. Please do remember that in your larger packet that you got earlier today, there is this Excel spreadsheet that has the snapshots and vignettes. So do know that you have those there. And we'd like to ask you to spend your last minute here and think about what is 1 or 2 takeaways that you have regarding the theme of content knowledge in the ELA ELD framework. So just think for a minute, and then we'll ask you to say a few. We could do a writing exit slip if we wanted, but we won't. And then any final questions? If you were my students, I'd do a whip, right? Everybody voices one. But we won't do that right now because, of course, I help them practice that first. A few comments, a takeaway.
You know, it's like what I was saying to you. I just really believe that, like, what I'm doing in ELA, it's a shift, it's a mind shift for me, that what I'm doing in ELA, I don't stop that and then I go, okay, now come over here for your designated time and I'm going to pull something else out and do something that's disconnected, but that, you know, whether it's integrated or you do have this separate time, that everything is connected, you know, and that it's reciprocal. It's just, it's about the scaffolding I provide and the English language development I provide to help them access, you know, the good, rich content.
Not in a vacuum,
It's
as
not
was
done
said
in a
earlier.
vacuum, yeah.
Thank you. Someone else. Thank you.
I think it gives context and reason why to learn, for a student to actually learn the language, is because content is why you want to do it. So integrating it into ELA gives context and purpose to the whole process.
So what you said this morning, motivate, motivation.
Any final comment?
Nancy, I really liked what you said. I'm going to quote you about helping students to find their fuel. And when you think about what it is you are teaching in content, I really like that a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome.